Good evening, and thank you for being here at this Fire Safety Essentials workshop for Gellibrand. If I will be leading the presentation, and my name is Julie Allens, and Mel Agnew will be assisting me.
Hello, everyone.
The session should go for about an hour, so if we start now, we will continue that. Before we do go any further, I'm having trouble moving my my slide deck. Before we do go any further, though, I'd like to acknowledge the local traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. We're in a webinar. This is new technology for us. It has been running. A lot of people will have been involved in webinars and meetings, online meetings, for a long time now. But the webinar means that you can't turn on your video or your audio. You'll be able to interact with us by answering polls when we put them up on your screen and by using the chat function. This is being recorded. This webinar is being recorded, but it is a record to see how we're going ourselves rather than for anything else. You will not be seen or heard on the recording. I'll be showing a few animations, some short videos throughout the session and some photos. There will be some interactions, so I won't be completely death by PowerPoint. If any of they may be a little bit stressful, so we will warn you before we actually put those up. The chat function is also available, and you'll see that at the bottom of your screen. So if you hover your mouse over the chat function, a little box will come up and you will be able to write in that. Mel and I will both be monitoring that chat as we go. You can also raise your hand, and as you do that, we will be able to see you too. Just a reminder that the polls that we will put up are anonymous, they're optional, and you will scroll through the responses. Some polls have one response, others have a couple. You submit your answers and close the polls when we ask you to. And the chat function has a function that says all panelists and attendees, and that's where you can ask questions. As I said, we will be monitoring that and attempt to answer those questions as we go.
I've had one person join us, Julie.
Welcome. If you've got kids, this is a reminder that this session is not meant for children or young people, and we recommend that you set your kids up for another activity. Keep them entertained or occupied away from the computer at this stage. If you can't do that, you can turn your camera off and rejoin when you're ready. But some of the vision that we have is not really suitable for children. So just a reminder about that. Just before we do go any further, perhaps you could use your chat function. So hover your mouse over the chat and just let us know where you're from. Where are you joining us from tonight on this session? And of course, in that chat function, you'll be able to write any questions or anything else that you have. The poll function is there to allow you to submit responses, and of course they're responses specifically to the questions that we are going to ask you. And what I might do too now is give you a bit of work to do, is put the first poll up, because the first poll is actually going to be a bit of an introduction of yourself. Let us know, you'll see when I launch the poll, how long have you lived in the area? And you've got a choice there between 1 to 10 plus years. Make sure you scroll down through the question. Have you been to a CFA meeting before? And say yes or no, or you can't remember. And then how did you find out about this session? So you've got a choice of questions there. So if you just keep scrolling down, you'll see the fourth question, and how would you rate your knowledge around fire? And as we said, these are anonymous polls. We can't tell who's answering what. And of course, there's no right or wrong answer. So just, and this is just to give us some idea of what you might know and where you're from. So once you've done that, once you've done those polls, when you scroll right down, you will see a submit button. So if you could submit that. And I see that people have finished those polls, so I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. And you'll see that 10 plus years have been to a CFA meeting before. Social media, heard it through social media, and a high knowledge of fire. Okay, that's really good to know. I have to, I'll close that poll now. Have to just reiterate though that this is a session, a basic session about fire and your reaction to it. There may not be anything in this session that you don't know. It is a basic knowledge of fire. So we're going to, what are we going to learn in this session? We're going to understand local fire risks, what to expect from a fire, how do you know if there is a fire, planning and decision making, and then surviving if your plan fails or you get caught out. So Mel, there's nothing in the chat function to give us any idea of where people are joining us from?
Not as yet. No, I did speak with Tony. He may be the one on board there, the captain, but there's nothing I can see just at the moment.
Okay, because if you, Mel and I don't actually live in the area, so if you are coming from close to Gellibrand, then you may be able to help us in some of these sessions, in some of the questions that we ask. So understanding your local risks. What sort of risks have you got in your area? As we know that Victoria is one of the most bushfire prone parts of the world. So, and of the world, not just Australia, but of the world. We have different risks in different parts of the state. So you'll see here, there's a range of landscapes and from grassland, bushland, mountainous forest areas, farmland, coastal scrub. And Gellibrand actually is in an area where you might come across, even it's not even that far from the sea, so you'll see some of that coastal scrub as well. So you'll see that most of the local risks, a lot of those illustrations could be Gellibrand. And I'll just remind you that use your chat function if you've got anything to add to any of these. So Victoria is actually divided up into weather districts, and we're in the southwest. So we're in the southwest district, and you'll see that it'll go, doesn't quite go as far as Ballarat, it's in the central. And each district has its own fire. It is divided up along the fire danger for each district. So depending what your danger is, depending what district you're in. That will bring us to, and we're in the southwest. It's good to know your districts, because if you're travelling, and especially say you're going to Halls Gap or Ballarat or even Lorne, you'll see that you're moving out of our southwest district. So that brings us to the seasonal outlook. So we've had a wetter than usual spring. So the ground is wetter, but it also means that there has been more growth. The season will probably be later. In Gellibrand area, where you have forest as well as grassland, you will see that the grassland grows, the grasses grow quickly and very thick, whereas the forest may not be as dry as it would normally be. When we say that the fire danger will probably be, or the season will be later, doesn't mean that there won't be a season. If we say that it might be a normal season, there can still be fires. And this year would be a good year to prepare your property for the future. And basically that's what this session is about, is being prepared for a fire. If we have a look at the local vegetation, and if you can use your chat function, if you could hover your mouse over the chat function, and just let us know what sort of vegetation is around you. When you look out your window, your kitchen window, what do you see? What sort of vegetation do you see? Is it the grass? Is it mountains? Is it trees? So open grassland is susceptible to wind and therefore fast-running grass fires. The direction of the wind will determine the direction of the fire. Once the grass is cured, that is, it's completely dry, fast-moving grass fires can come from any direction depending on the wind, even from the southwest. And we've all seen that in previous fires, that's actually what's happened. With this in mind, if a fire started, do you think it would be a good idea to expect a fire truck at your property to help defend your property? So if we look at the local risks, you'll see a number of pictures here that actually will describe, well, can illustrate local risks. And there are many local risks, not just bushland or grassland, but there's traffic, there's infrastructure, there's roads, conditions of roads. There are a number of things that could influence what you might do in a fire. So what sort of high risks have you got in your area? What sort of things can you think of that might be high risk in your area? I'm going to actually launch another poll now that talks about those local risks. So if I launch the poll, and it gives you some idea, what are some of the things that you could make your local area a high risk area? So we're talking high fuel loads, high tourists in summer, and potential speed of grass fires, numerous grass fires sparked by embers, narrow winding roads, tree limbs hanging across roads as an escape route. So local risks doesn't just mean vegetation. We aren't talking about just vegetation. If we give you, so we can see that, all right, I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. And you'll see that people think that in Gellibrand, your risk is high fuel loads. It's obvious. Tourists in summer, and those tourists won't have the knowledge of fire that locals will have. So yes, there are potential risks too. Narrow winding roads, many unmade and winding roads in around Gellibrand in that area. And then of course you've got your tree limbs hanging over access roads. Even though the grassland isn't that prolific around Gellibrand, don't disregard that as a risk if there is a fire. If the fire comes out of the bush and gets that grassland, if it is such a bad day, that can still send embers and go through that as well. So I'm going to stop sharing the results and close that. Now that we've talked about local risks, we'll talk about what Gellibrand has to protect it. Gellibrand has a fire brigade, has a fire shed. There are 138 properties at the last 2016 census, 210 people. There is a tanker and an ultralight, so that Gellibrand has 2 trucks that can be used in a fire, 2 fire trucks. So you think that perhaps there you've got good protection. But now if you think about what risks you have and where you live and how easy it is to get to your property and who's in the town, how likely is it that a fire truck will turn up at your property or around your property if there is a fire? Do you realistically expect a truck to be there to assist you? So what we want to do is to actually prepare you so that if there is a fire, then you are prepared, so that you have the basic understanding of fire behaviour, you are aware of your risks, and you have a plan, you're aware of your personal responsibilities and your safety, and you're not going to rely on a fire truck being there. So what would you expect of a fire? If there was a fire, what would you expect? Now, as we said, Victoria is the most prone area for fires in the world. And only a few years ago, we saw huge multiple parts of the state on fire. And the Southwest has experienced those fires in recent years. It doesn't just happen to other people. So some of the images that we're about to see and the videos we're about to look at can be quite confronting. So if you feel that this is going to be an upset, then yeah, please look away. It could be distressing to some people, and it certainly is not suitable for children or young people. What we're going to talk about is Ember Attack. The Ember Attack can happen in grass fires as well as forest fires. I might, while I get this set up, Mel, I might just pass it over to you.
Yeah, so with your Ember Attack, probably one of the most dangerous parts of a fire being that, as you can see already in that graphic on the screen, it's the embers that can travel sometimes 30 kilometres ahead of a fire. So if you've got the big wind, if you've got a day with it's strong wind, likely to travel
During a
along.
bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs and pieces of bark.
We'll just stop it there. Julie's just going to try and figure out what's going on there.
What's wrong? What's happening?
The video's not running. It's got the play button right in the middle of the screen, but it's not actually running. I've got the leaves, sticks and bark, which is sort of the opening slide, but and a big button which you would normally push to play.
But it's not actually playing.
It's not actually playing, no.
I've actually got it playing on my screen.
Yeah. Try again, give it another go, see how we go.
Right.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire.
It's not working, Julie.
Embers are burning leaves, twigs and...
All right, so that's not working.
Yeah. So,
I don't know why that's not working.
can we restart it possibly? Or?
If I go back to my original slide.
Yep. We have a big button. It looks like you would normally push it as a play button. Yeah, we've got an X come up on the screen now. Yeah.
And now, of course, I've got the circle happening on mine.
Oh yeah, well it thinks about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right. So I might. So what can you see now?
Just that original Ember Attack, the start of the video.
The slide.
Yeah.
All right. What can you see now? Still the slide?
Yeah, I'll let you know if it changes, but at this stage we just got the Ember Attack slide up there.
Okay. Still got that. All right. I'm going to just press the button.
Yeah, press the. I was going to say press the button just there. Yeah. We'll see.
Can you see?
I can see that you've pressed it. Yeah,
but nothing's happening.
No, nothing's happening at this stage.
Okay.
So I might have to leave that Ember.
And you can't hear it either?
No, we can't hear it at all now either. It was originally sound with no video, but we've now got nothing.
Right. This could be not working at all.
Yeah. Perhaps you want to try and go back to it.
Just if you want to
So what we've got with the Ember Attack basically is that it's probably one of the major risks with the embers coming in front of the fire. You may have even a well-prepared property, but the problem being that if you do have a well-prepared property, you still need to have put a lot of thought into the actual preparation and how you're going to defend the property. And embers are one of the reasons why it can be very difficult. You can have multiple fires starting around your property. If it's a high wind, they could be well and truly ahead of the fire. And this is one of the things that causes a lot of distress and certainly fatigue if you've got multiple small fires popping up around your property and you're trying to defend it. So it is really a major concern is the Ember Attack. It was one of the major features in the big fires that we had, the Black Saturday top fires. It was just a major concern, a major problem for those trying to fight a fire. How are we going, Julie?
So what can you see on your screen now?
I've got the warning, the following content.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll
Right,
try.
so try, yeah. The sound isn't really going very well either.
The sound was okay, but it was just the.
Right, so I'll just.
Okay,
so now you've got the slide.
Yep. Push
So
the.
what happens? So what happens is I press the play button and it goes to a YouTube.
Yes.
Video. So do you see that?
No, that's not happening tonight. It has been, but it's not happening tonight.
You're just seeing that. Okay.
Just seeing that.
Still on the slide.
Yeah. So I'll let you know if it changes. But now we've got volume.
Sorry, I've just stopped now.
Embers will reach your home.
So we had the volume come on there, which is good.
Sorry.
The volume came. We've got the volume. Now we just need to go back and get that video.
Right. So I've just stopped the sharing.
Yep.
Perhaps it would be better not to actually try these videos if they're not going to work.
Yeah, we might just continue.
If we just talk about it, rather than we can show the now. Oh, of course we're not sharing anymore, am I?
Yeah, I'll go back to sharing.
Yeah, just.
How are we going there?
Sorry, I really have
got some issues going on there. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
right, we've got this. Okay.
Yep.
Slideshow.
Yeah. Click on that one.
From the beginning. Sorry, I've done it again.
Just scroll through, folks, and get back to where.
Okay, we talk about Ember Attack, but we're not going to show the video, so we'll just show the screen. Show the
we've got that back up now.
Okay, and we've talked, and Mel's talked about what Ember Attack means.
You can see from that slide the sort of examples of it and what it can do.
And if you can, there are some wonderful YouTube videos on Ember Attack, and that's simply what I was trying to log on to do. So it might be worth, if you're interested, into actually going into those YouTube videos and seeing if you can find them. It is an excellent one, but I can see that the next one we've got is not going to work either if that one hasn't worked.
Yeah. Just encourage yourself, folks. Yeah. Just look it up on the internet and see if you can see anything on Ember Attack.
Excellent animations that the CFA has developed over the last couple of years. And you can see by these images that Ember Attacks don't happen just in forest fires, can also happen in grass fires. And as some of you will know, that a grass fire will be 3 times as high as the grass itself. So the flames are fairly high and they can send embers into the air and get into your onto your property, into your houses. Once again, now we're going to talk about radiant heat. And yes, I'm not really keen on actually trying it again.
It looks like the same problem, Julie. Yeah.
It'll probably be the same problem if we did. So if we talk about radiant heat, and this is an excellent animation that shows the effect of radiant heat. The radiant heat is, of course, heat that is similar to a campfire. If you're next to a campfire or a fire in your home, an open fire, and you have that heat, on your skin. That's what the radiant heat is. And the flames, the radiant heat will actually, it's not the flames that will kill a person. We might just say that the embers are the greatest cause of property loss in a fire. Radiant heat is the greatest loss of life in a fire. So it's not actually the flames that might cause death in a fire, it's the effect of radiant heat. Because radiant heat actually, well, it seems really, really harsh, but it actually cooks you from the inside out even. And we all know, we have seen the effects of radiant heat. When you're driving along after a fire, when you've come to places after a fire, you will see houses splintered with radiant heat, signs melted. And that's what radiant heat is. So once again, I do apologise for not being able to show those videos. They are very effective. And if you just want to search them on YouTube, you can do that. But be warned, they are quite graphic. Radiant heat is another reason why you may not make good decisions in a fire. It actually damages, it can damage your brain and your internal organs. So it makes the decision making, that your usual rational self-decision making, it affects that ability to make those good decisions. Once again, that is, I don't know whether I can say this enough, that is another reason why leaving early is the best option. And this slide just shows a few people, what people thought after a fire. CFA always interviews people after a big fire to learn, to work out what went wrong, what went right. And these are just some of the things that people have said, that it was just, and not many people who have stayed for a fire, who haven't left, would do it again. And just the words that have used, the hailstorm of embers in the Kinglake fire of 2009, just indicates how traumatic it can be. So what does this all mean for you? It can be very stressful and traumatic situation that you have to have a plan and be prepared for. Exit roads might be blocked. If we had been able to see the animation, you would have seen that people who stayed and left when the embers started to fall around their houses, there was no way out. Cars had blocked the roads. Ember attack causes fire to spread very quickly. And we've seen that in a lot of southwest fires recently. And then radiant heat is the biggest killer. And your ability to make good decisions will be impacted by many factors in a fire. So we might just actually launch another poll in that I'm going to ask you what you would expect from a fire. What do you think would impact your ability to make good decisions in a fire situation? This is a multiple choice question, so you can answer one or all or none of those things. So stress, rapidly changing situation, things not going to plan, not having enough time, and communication breakdown. So if you can just think about those things, and of course there's no right or wrong answer again. If you can just think about what might cause you to not make the decisions. Okay, thank you. I'll just end the poll and share the results. And of course, stress in a fire situation, even if you don't realise that you're under stress, even if you've trained and practiced, there is still a certain amount of stress. And the situation will change rapidly. And that communication breakdown is certainly. Not having enough time, people tend to leave things until the last minute. And if things don't go to plan, what do you do then? Like our presentation tonight, and it certainly hasn't gone to plan, it has causing a bit of stress. but we are changing it to suit. But things happen, and we can't always, things don't always go as we plan them to. So I'm going to close that and move on to our next slide. And how do we know if there is a fire? So what sort of things do we look out for to know that there is a fire? Perhaps if you use the chat function, once again, you might be able to let us know what you think. How do you know if there's a fire in the area? What sort of things indicate to you that there's a fire? Of course, if you're in the fire brigade, the pager going off for a phone call will be the first thing. We might talk about the fire danger ratings. What do they mean? What do the fire danger ratings mean? And most people will have seen these, and most people are aware of what they are. They're everywhere. They're on TV in the danger rating. They're in the weather. They're on the radio. They're on the sides of the roads. So they're on social media. But what do they actually mean? Going to launch another poll and ask you, what does the danger rating mean? I will launch it. So what does it mean? Is it an indicator of how likely a fire will start, or is it an indicator of how bad a fire would be if it was to start? And then just a couple of questions about code red days. How many code red days have there been in our region in the last 5 years? And how many severe or extreme days have happened in this region in the last 5 years? So if you could just answer those questions, have a guess at the number of days, and gives us some indication of what you think those ratings mean. Will we close the poll here now?
Yeah, I think so.
End the poll, and you'll see that the fire danger rating is actually an indicator of how bad a fire will be, not how likely it'll start, because a fire can start at any time in any of the ratings, without the ratings even. We haven't had any code red days in the southwest in the last 5 years. We've had 6 severe or extreme days. So a lot of people do think that the fire danger rating does indicate that a fire, how bad a fire would, excuse me a minute, if a fire would start, but it isn't. It is more likely, excuse me, how hard it will be to put that fire out.
Spread and the rapid spread, and how difficult it will be to suppress that fire. So that's the main thing that we want to make people aware of, is that it's how difficult it will be to control the fire.
Thank you, Mel. So what does severe, extreme and code red actually mean? On a severe day, it will be hot, dry and possibly windy conditions. And if a fire starts and takes hold, it could be uncontrollable. But on an extreme day, it will be extremely hot, dry and windy. If a fire starts and takes hold, it will be uncontrollable, unpredictable and fast moving. Spot fires will start, move quickly and will come from many directions. And then on a code red day, these are the worst conditions for a bush or grass fire. Homes are not designed or constructed to withstand fires in these conditions, and the safest place to be is to be away from high-risk bushfire areas. So leaving high bushfire risk areas the night before or early of the day is your safest option. Don't wait and see. And avoid forested areas, thick bush and long dry grass. Know your triggers. Make a decision about where and when you will leave and where you will go and how you will get there, and then also when you will return, and what would you do if you can't leave. So those are all the things that you've got to consider when you're looking at these things. A code red day is a day where it's almost even though we've said that they're uncontrollable, they still will be fought. There will be firemen out there trying to control these fires. They aren't just let to run without any
suppression at all.
Yeah, so there's still people out there trying to put them out, but you can't expect it to be easy. So where do we get our information from? Sort of information, where do we get the information about the fires? How do we know if there's a fire, and where do we get that information? So if you look at all these things, these are all areas or places that you can get that information. Your local gossip, your radio, your friends, the cafe, your social media. So what we're looking at though is more, this is what we call informal sources of information. And what we would like people to do is to take on more formal sources of information. Know where you can get that information. So it's actually collaborated. So it's so that you can say, yes, we know what the situation is because we've heard it from a more formal spot, a more formal source. And they are your local news. And most news stations now, radio stations now, are emergency radio broadcasters. The Vic Emergency Hotline, online, the Emergency Management of Victoria website, your SAT Facebook pages, your Brigade Facebook page even, the app, the Vic Emergency app, the National Relay Service, the interpreters if you need that, and of course the emergency alert that has been run the last few years very successfully. On your mobile phone, you'll get an alert if there's an emergency in your area, even if you don't live in that area, but if you are in that area holidaying, you'll still get that emergency alert. So they are all formal sources of information, and they're valid information, sources of information that you need to be monitoring on those high-risk days. CFA does have a number of warnings, but we don't want you to wait for those warnings. We want you out of there before. You don't need to rely on those warnings. So the first one is the advice, which just means that there is an incident occurring or has occurred in the area. Access information and monitor conditions. So just keep an eye out, see what's going on. And you can also use as a notification that activity in the area has subsided and is no longer a danger to you. So it's just advice. It's telling you that there's something happening in the area. If you get a watch and act, that's an emergency is developing nearby. And you need to take action now to protect yourself and others. So a watch and act means you need to actually do something. An emergency warning is that you're in imminent danger. You need to take action immediately. You will be impacted. So, and you might get these warnings in this order. You might receive an emergency warning before you receive an advice warning. So CFA's main take-home message is do not wait for a warning. And don't expect a warning, and don't think that a warning will save you if there is an emergency. There is also an evacuation notice, and that is telling people that there is a procedure to evacuate and that it is recommended. And then, of course, you have your community information, and it's usually a newsletter, and it updates the community once there has been an emergency in the area. So it can be a notification that there is has been an emergency, it has subsided, and it may give you some ideas of what sort of recovery situations there are. But what we don't want you to do is to actually wait for a warning. This little illustration, this little animation which is working, will actually give you some idea of that. So say if you're in your house, it's an extreme day, a hot day, and you're in your house and you're watching TV and you've got your curtains closed and you're monitoring the situation, you're listening to the radio, you've got your big emergency app, so you think you know what's going on, but a fire starts not far from your place. So a fire starts, but the fire starts on its own. There's no one there, and it's not until at least 5 minutes, that the fire's been going, that the fire's reported to 000. So now 000 is getting themselves organised. Your page has gone off. You head off to the fire station. The fire after 10 minutes has developed. People in Melbourne at the communication centre have now put out an advice message to say that there's a fire in the area. But look where your house is. Still very close to where the fire is. If you're waiting, you're looking, you've just received an advice message, that's just telling you there's something happening in the area. By the time you get the emergency warning, the fire's past your house. So this is what we mean when we say you may be ahead of the warning. You can't depend on the warnings. You can't have people say, well, I didn't get a warning, CFA didn't tell me, or a big emergency, or firefighters didn't tell me to move. You have to be responsible for yourself. So how do you know if there's a fire? How do you know if you're ahead of a fire, if you're ahead of those warnings? And these three senses that we have is the best way of knowing that. Keep your eyes out, don't keep the curtains closed. Listen, fires can affect birds, wind, and smell. Of course, you will smell smoke from a great distance. So your key messages is know what the FDRs are, the fire danger ratings are, and how they work and what to use them for. Use credible sources of information to make informed decisions, and don't wait for a warning. Okay, so if we continue on, we now have some idea of how a fire works, how a fire might affect you. But now we're going to look at planning and decision making. Remember, think that your decision making at the time can be quite irrational, and especially if you're not planned or prepared. So we're going to look at a couple of situations and see what sort of things you might do in this situation. I'm just going to talk you through a situation. It's a hot day. It's an extreme day. You have a look around. You've got your have you got a fire plan? Do you know what you're going to do on an extreme day? You do need to go into town. You've decided that you will continue with that. You've thought about what you might do. You're heading to town, even though it's an extreme day. And you hear when you're in town that there is a fire started in your area. You've got your big emergency app. You've looked at the thing. You've worked out that the fire's not so far from your house. So you're going to head back home and see what's going on. You think you know what's going on, so you're going to head back home, but you get there and the police are in the way. There's a roadblock. You can't get through. You can't actually get home. What do you do? What do you do in a situation like that? You wind down your window and you say, well, you know, we want, my house is just up the road there. I need to get home. And they say, no, you can't. The road's closed. There's fire. You can't get through. I'm going to actually launch another poll now. And this is going to ask you what you would have done in a situation like that. So where would you have been on an average Wednesday in summer? Just an average day during the week. Would you be at work, home, vacation? Thinking about last summer or the summer before, if considering COVID, would you have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home in an emergency situation like this? Think of a one of those hot summer days, even a couple of years ago. Would you have been prepared? And then last summer, did you have an emergency kit packed with some clothes, important documents, photos, and medicines? So if you could just answer those questions.
Yeah, Julie.
Sorry.
You want to launch the poll?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mel. Thank you. So if you think of those questions, it just gives you some idea of what you might have been doing and how you might have acted on those days. And think about, as you're answering those questions too, think about not just where you would have been, but who you would have been talking to, who would have been around, who are you responsible for? So home. So if you're in the middle of summer, you may be home. Yes. Thinking, would you have been prepared to spend a few nights away from home in an emergency situation? And did you have an emergency kit packed? So really good to see people have had an emergency kit packed. But to spend a night away, would you be prepared to do that? Would you have your medication with you when you went into town? Would you know what to do if you did need to spend the night away and you didn't have those things? So I'll end that poll and share the results. And usually in summer, yes, people would be home, and that's when they've got to have the plan. But you've got to you've got to have a plan for different situations. What if it was a Saturday and not a Wednesday? What if you were at work rather than at home? So I will just stop sharing that and close that. Okay, so what if in this situation you had been in town, there was a fire in your area, you've done the right thing, but this time you could actually get home? What happens in a situation like that? You've got home, and now what's your plan to get out? Because you can see the fire, you can see it coming closer, you can see it almost there. What is your plan to get out? Have you got that kit? Have you got things ready to just put in the back of the car? Do you know where your kids are, where your neighbours are? And what are you going to do? Have you got the phone numbers of people? Have you any animals? Have you got their stuff that they need? So I guess all of this is be prepared and leave early. If you had been prepared on that extreme day to just go into town, you knew you had to do something in town, take your kit, be prepared to stay the night, get out. And then all you have to do is work out, when would you come back? When's that time to come back? So what would you do in a situation like this if you had to get back? And what would you have done differently if you did get caught in a situation like that? If you got back to your property and then found that you couldn't get out again? Does your plan include defending your house or your home or your farm? But would you be able to do that? If you look around where you live, you have those trees, those narrow roads, would it be possible to do that? So when would you leave? That would be your question. At what stage would you leave? Would you wait? Would you leave before an extreme day? Would you wait till there was a sign of a fire? Those are the things that you have to. So you need to make a plan. You need to be prepared. You need to think ahead and make that plan before summer starts. You need to stay informed. So you need to download the Big Emergency app. And you can attend a bushfire planning workshop CFA runs. So they are all areas that you can use in helping with your preparation. The CFA website has a lot of information that can help with you making those plans. So what if, now let's have a look at if your survival plan fails. If you've made your plan, you know what you're doing, you're fairly confident, but if it fails, what can you do then? What resources have you got and what situations are you in? So cover up. We talked about radiant heat. You need to cover up. You need to have protection of your skin and your body. Hat, eye protection, mask, natural fibres. And that can be part of your emergency kit. So you can have that in a bag in the car so that if you do get stuck, you've got something to put on, because on a hot day, an extreme day, you'll probably just have your t-shirt and your shorts on. You can shelter behind solid objects. They do provide some protection. Radiant heat can't bend around corners, can't go through solid objects, can go through glass though. So glass can shatter with radiant heat. If you do shelter behind a house, for instance, the house could burn. So the radiant heat could actually set that on fire. There are places that you could shelter. Water sources, the dams, the rivers, the open spaces. So a ploughed paddock or a reserve. A stationary car parked away from the fire or in the burnt area could provide some protection. But don't forget, the cars are designed to get people from A to B, not to protect them from fire. There's no guarantee of your safety in any of these situations. There are such things as neighbourhood bushfire place resource or neighbourhood safer places. Gellibrand does have a neighbourhood safer place on the corner of Colac and Labour's Hill Road, an old beech forest road at Gellibrand. So it's the Rex Norman Park. Neighbourhood safer places are not designed to keep you comfortable during a fire. If you get to a neighbourhood safer place, don't expect to find anyone there to look after you. It is exactly that, a place of last resort. There won't be a copy van there. It will not be comfortable. You will still be surrounded by smoke and maybe embers. But it is a designated place where there is an open ground that will give you some sort of protection. Still, it's not a place that you should depend on. It really is a place of last resort. Some of these images that we're going to put up could be stressful. Driving through fires. There is no way that you should drive through a fire. Even fire trucks try not to drive through a fire. The smoke will cause you not to be able to see. The grass fire will be fast moving. Wind, trees could fall down. Branches could fall in front of them. So there is, and to be sheltering in something like this, in a car would be just plain horrific. So right through this whole presentation, the take-home message is don't be there. Get out early. So make a plan. Download the resources. There's the guide to survival, guide to property preparation. Write a plan, practice it. CFA does have bushfire planning workshops to help you. Download the Vic Emergency app and connect with your local brigade and your community. Let people find out what other people are doing. Let them know what you're doing. Your local region headquarters, District 6 in Colac. The phone number is there. You can contact them anytime for any of this support, for any of those things. Talk to you, if any of this has been stressful, talk to your loved ones. There are phone numbers there that you can contact, but our main message is be prepared. Have a plan and be prepared. We have actually a final poll before we do go. This is a final poll for a closing, just for our information to let us know whether this has been of a better understanding, and whether you would actually perhaps be kind because our videos didn't work. Does it give you a better understanding of bushfire risk in your local area? Remember, it was designed as a basic fire knowledge thing for people with basic fire knowledge. And would you recommend the program for family and friends? So just for our records, to just let us know. And thank you very much. I will end that poll, and that's very kind, yes. And even if it does just confirm people's knowledge, it's good to have that reminder. And thank you for recommending it, even though I will share those results, even though our videos didn't work. So thank you. So that's it. That's our presentation. If there's anything else that we can help you with, or any questions that you've got, there's the chat function, and of course you can contact the local office, CFA office in Colac, or your local brigade. And thank you.
If you want to leave the presentation, you'll see the leave button on the bottom right hand corner there. Thank you.
So thank you.